And I'm going to kick it over to Devin first, since Allego is sponsoring this event, and then we will pass it over to Katie.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Devin, and I am a senior account executive here at Allego. Been with the company for coming up on 4 years, about 3.5.
And my name is Katie Van Humison. I lead our enterprise sales enablement motion and outreach, which means I work with our upmarket account executives and their leaders on all things sales effectiveness. And in my past life, I was a strategy consultant and worked with large Fortune 500 companies. So I've kind of seen the full gamut of really large enterprise to hypergrowth startup.
And my name is Donald Kelly. I run a sales training and consulting firm out of South Florida called The Sales Evangelist. I have a popular sales podcast tied to that topic as well. And we focus a lot on building pipe, helping sellers build pipe, build top of funnel, and also obviously converting that. And we love giving out free stuff as well. So connect with me on LinkedIn, Donald C. Kelly.
Yeah, yep. Make sure you connect with all these folks. They are awesome, like I said. And later on, I will try to drop all the LinkedIn profiles I can. But let's go ahead and just dive on in. So for today, I just want to give a little bit of context behind today's conversation. The RAIM Group survey, 70% of companies said their number one sales priority is improving their sellers' ability to communicate value. That's great news, right? And no wonder CSO Insights surveyed B2B buyers, and 90% of them would meet with sellers earlier in the buying process if those sellers added value. But that's the problem. They don't. 68% of those same buyers said there was little difference or no difference at all among sellers. Buyer expectations have changed. They want, readily available content. They want to make the decision when they're ready. Buyers are well educated, and in many cases, we've seen and done about 90% or more of research themselves before they even engage with the company. Selling has shifted to a more consultative approach. So, Donald, why don't you go ahead and kick us off? How does your team approach the virtual buying experience?
So I love this one. And the points here are just like right on the money. One of the big problems that we see all the time, not only with our team, but also with the folks that we work with, is just that we have an ability to be able to pass or give out a lot more information through our automated sequences and so forth. And everyone jumps on that wagon. The issue is, going back to what you're saying, is like the buyers have been overwhelmed with that. And your emails, LinkedIn did a study. And one of the things they pointed out was email outreach went up by 50% since the pandemic, and then reply rate has declined by 30%. So, obviously we're not getting enough communication. So one of the things that we've realized and we take advantage of is, how can we bring more insights to the table? And I know that's such a generic term, right? So let's break that down. Like, how can we identify problems that a prospect don't even know that they're having, and bring those to the table in our conversation, in our outreaches? So one thing that we do as an organization is we provide more access or ability for our prospects to kind of learn prior to going into a conversation with us as a sales team. We know that 50% of the buying committees now are millennials, and we like to buy in our own way. So if I can provide them as much information as possible and prep them, then when my team come in, my team are consultants, because we get an opportunity to work with hundreds of different prospects throughout the course of a month. So we get a chance to understand what are some of the issues going on in different businesses. And we're able to use those insights in our conversations. And it helps to stimulate the conversation and shows our expertise and our knowledge. We're not necessarily doing a volume approach. We definitely follow the ABM strategy, but this allows for us to be able to fine tune and to focus our efforts. And that's one of the things that we've adopted internally to help us with the top of the funnel and to have better conversations is, one, just again, take advantage of the information we're learning from different prospects and to use that in our outreach approaches and to bring those insights to the table, or what we call blindside challenge. There are different tools that you can take advantage of, like intent-based solutions and whatnot out there. But those ideas help us to be able to foster or stimulate better conversation from the jump.
I really like that idea of better conversations. The term insights, of course, can be quite vague, but the way I think about it too, in prepping my sales team to go out and have those consultative conversations, is around forming a hypothesis.
Mm-hmm.
We think We even have something in our core sales decks called a hypothesis slide. And it is a key part of the account planning process. It's about doing your research and prepping a slide or some thoughts to share back with the buyer. And it can be kind of scary to come into a conversation and say, this is what I think about your business. This is what I think is going on. But at the end of the day, it's just a hypothesis. And the number one thing we always tell the sales team is that it's okay to be wrong. Perhaps it's a great thing to hear that you're wrong, because you know what they're going to do after you hear that you're wrong? They're going to tell you what actually they're dealing with. They're going to tell you the truth about your business. And that's going to kick off your discovery process, but you will have already credentialized yourself and that you know enough about their business to start a conversation, that you're willing to put in the research, and it'll make the rest of your conversations that much more productive.
I love it. And I think one of the best, the great part about that too, is just, it shows that you're thinking. You're not just like the old term empty suit, just like showing up or just like making a phone call and just like, I'm going to pitch slap you. It's like, I'm giving you something that I thought it's a high probability, like you said, or a hypothesis based on what we are seeing right now. And I love that idea. So kudos to you guys and any sales reps that's doing that. Like, you got to take advantage of it. I'm going to borrow that. If that's cool.
It's a little risky.
I think kind of combining what the two of you said, not only giving people what's relevant, giving people those insights on where they're at, using that intent data, leveraging the tools that are available to us, but also bringing things that they might not be able to find throughout their own research, because they are doing their own research. They are going online, going on the website. People don't want to talk to sales reps anymore. So giving people access to information that, maybe is something that it's not posted on your website. It's not easily readable. It's something that's maybe customized that you even created, even a video. That's something Allego likes to do a lot, is doing a personalized video to kind of help not only differentiate, but bring value to them and where they're at.
And one of the things too, go back to that idea of, there was a study done by Gartner, and I love my studies, so I sound like a walking encyclopedia sometimes, because it's just, I'm that nerd that, instead of binge watching latest thing, I'm watching some stats. But no, but one of the things though that Gartner pointed out, going right in line with what you're saying, Devin, was that the average, the average buyer, of course, we know is coming more prepared, but they stated several problems. Like, one, though the buyer's coming more prepared, oftentimes after they make a purchase or decide to go with a solution, independent of working with a seller, 23% of them have buyer remorse. So then they're like, holy moly, like, so what's going on here? Why are they having buyer remorse? And the problem is that they have so much information. And that's why I love where the salespeople, it's like, instead of salespeople engaging here, it's like you're waiting further back here to engage. And when you do engage, you need to be able to help me to make a decision. I have tons of insights now, and I have tons of content, and I read a whole bunch of blog posts, but I'm still confused on which software that I need to best go with. And that's where your expertise come in. And doing stuff like video and like hyper personalize that and give so much value right away.
Totally. I think that video that's just one of the key things that we lean on, because you can really, we also, in order to kind of customize the experience, lean on digital sales rooms, which are essentially microsites of content that are personalized for either a buying committee or a specific person or a company or whoever it might be. And it can make it a less daunting experience. You know exactly where you need to go to access the resources that you want in relation to this particular company or this particular product, without necessarily needing to fish through emails, attachments, online sites, whatever it might be.
And Katie, just from your experience, do you have a standard template for success?
Well, there's many different approaches you can take, but I think one of the things we're talking about, in addition to insights and being consultative, is helping the buyer at every single step in the journey. It is a complicated thing sometimes to buy software. And a lot of people, even if you've bought software before or whatever it is you're selling, haven't bought that particular type of software or particular type of product. And so knowing all the steps and driving transparency there is key. And one of the ways that we think about it in enablement and with our sales teams at Outreach is using one of our features called Success Plans. It's a mutual action plan. It's a template that shows you basically a project plan, if you haven't used one before, of start to finish in a buying process. And as Devin mentioned, like a DSR, it provides the opportunity to create transparency in the buying process and a one-stop shop to put all of your content in one place. But most importantly, I think it educates at every single step. And you can also get that feedback from the buyer that says, hey, I have extra security reviews. I didn't see that later on in your success plan. Can we add those in? I want to be sure that we're thinking about those steps and that in the timeline. And so we encourage our sellers to use these often and as a way to manage their deals. I think I've traditionally heard about mutual action plans being critical later in the sales cycle and later stages once you get into technical validation, et cetera. But we actually think about it as a way to qualify your buyer. If someone's willing to engage with you in a success plan, they're probably an interested buyer. And so bringing it in very early in the sales process is encouraged, but it's also important, especially in enablement. We think about how do we set up our reps to introduce it appropriately. If you don't have any context for it, it can feel a little abrasive to kind of push a plan on a buyer. And so you have to be careful and thoughtful about the way that you introduce it so they understand the mutual value for them. It's as much for them as it is for the seller. And so being sure to tee it up appropriately is critical in enablement. It's part of my role to make sure that our reps are up to speed on what the go-to talk track and key signs for introducing that are in the sales process.
I think, Katie, mutual. Oh, sorry.
Go for it, Devin.
I was just going to say mutual is key. It's something that's created together, so it'll feel a lot less abrasive when it is. Those steps can be added in. It's not just here's my process, but it's I'm meeting you where you are, and here's our process that we've created together, being guided by the seller in that more consultative way that we kind of talked about at the beginning. Our team actually started doing these, and we found that, just anecdotally speaking, our time to get a decision one way or another had significantly increased, and there was virtually no deals that were won that didn't have a mutual action plan. It became that much a part of our cookbook, a part of our process, and was working, just so well. People seemed to appreciate it that it was definitely scaled across the team.
And say, out of curiosity, when it comes to your average deal size, Devin, or even for you, Katie, what's that deal size you would say?
To use a mutual action plan?
When you use your mutual action plans.
Yeah, I think we are continuing to decrease the size of the deal that requires a mutual action plan. I think as we get more comfortable and realize the value within the business, we're using them for smaller and smaller deals. We just scale back the plan to have fewer steps. You don't want a huge multi-month plan right out the gate if you're talking about a pretty transactional deal, but the steps and the need for transparency is still valid regardless of the deal size. And so setting that threshold about what makes sense workload wise for your reps is important, but recognizing that it isn't just for large enterprise deals is also key.
Agreed. Same with us. And I think it's also depending on who you're working with. Sometimes a mutual action plan is a couple lines on a PowerPoint, and that's it. More visual people. You're not trying to create more work or create more steps that are going to get in the way of buying, but sometimes it's sharing a Google Doc that has, it's larger. There's many stakeholders, a lot of people involved, but I think either way, kind of customizing that to whoever it is that you're working with, timeline, and just their personality type. I know charts and graphs are not for everybody, but there still is value there.
And see, and the reason why I love that so much, like what you're both sharing, because historically, like the mutual action plan is, folks might deem it as something in the enterprise space, but everyone is buying like an enterprise sales process, a sales process that I see nowadays. It's like they have like several people that are going to bring involved, or there's more steps that they need to get accomplished. And then the other part to that too, we just hit on this. And I know we had talked about this in our pre-call, but like 60, it was this. I think the studies proved that 65% of the population are visual people, and all of us as sales professionals, we are selling our product every single day. We know that process, And for many of you sales leaders, your sales reps jump on these calls and they assume the buyer knows how to buy. These people don't know how to buy your crap because they haven't bought your stuff in probably forever. Maybe they're new to that role, or your stuff's not crap, but bought your services or products. But they may not necessarily be used to it. They potentially may have bought software before, but the thing is, they don't necessarily know how this is going to go. And as opposed to us assuming that they understand, and they assuming that, this is what I feel elongates the process. And that's why I love your idea with the use of the DSLR, the digital sales room. I'm trying to think about camera right now, looking into it. The digital sales room. Because the beautiful thing about that is that it gives you not only the visual aspect, but it's almost like this timeline approach. And I don't know, I feel like if I'm a buyer in that process, it's a novelty thing, especially right now. So it makes me feel cool that, dang, man, Devin looked out for me. Or, man, shoot, Katie hooked me up here. They created this for me and my team. It's like, it's next level stuff.
And even when new people are joining in, so as the buying team is growing, as new stakeholders are getting into the mix, I found that the DSRs is specifically helpful, and the mutual action plan, which can be put right into the digital sales room, which is what we do in a lot of cases. It brings new people up to speed. This is what's been talked about. These are some recordings of calls. That's a big one, or some snippets of meetings that we've had. Here's the notes. Here's all the things that have taken place up until this point. So it doesn't feel like people are so, new people coming in are so blindsided, or if they are maybe the ultimate decision maker, or, the ultimate power in that deal, and they have other people kind of doing research on their behalf, it shows some clear validation, which can be a big differentiator against competition a lot of time. Here's all of the things that your team has done in order to get to this point, as opposed to having to dig that up over email or re-review your notes from the calls. It's all right there in one spot.
And the other good thing about that too, that you just gave me a thought with that. Like, think about if I'm bringing on a new rep and I'm trying to show them, and maybe they're transitioning into an AE position. If we looked at the past, like 10 deals in like using the DSR, the DSR.
The L.
I know, right? That L just gets me. It just rolls off the tongue. But DSR, if we utilize go back and look at the past 10 deals, we can start to see those patterns. And it's so easy to understand what we need to do to execute. And again, when we talk to work with our team and see if we could shorten their sales cycle, or, cut off some time off that pipe, those are one of the biggest components. Is that there's a lot of ambiguity. Somebody assumed something was going to take place, or that this was going to be done for a deal to convert, but it's elongated. It sits and wonders. So anyways, got me all excited, man.
I think that's such a great point, especially about kind of like repeating what's working. That's a huge thing. And I mean, we've just seen even people that include a personalized video, just open rates and going back to that are so much stronger. And then also we found too much information inside of the DSR up front. That's not getting you anywhere, because at that point, it kind of feels like you're sifting around the website and you're back to square one again. So it's kind of finding that balance of who are you working with, what's the type of information that they need, and at what stage. As time goes on, it's going to grow, but to start off, it's not going to be every single case study and Gartner report that there is out there.
Yeah.
I think that really resonates with me. When in enablement, we're thinking about what templates to provide reps for digital sales rooms, or go-to best practices. And it's ensuring that our teams are aware of what works for us. And exactly to your point, Devin, what is too much, what content goes where, at which stage in your buying process, and also thinking about verticalization, et cetera. What are the things that we can make it easier on all of you as reps to get the DSR up and running? It shouldn't have to be creating from scratch every single time. The business knows what works. We know what our standard content is to get started, and then customizing along the way is key.
Yeah, I love that. Templates are also helpful. So as an individual contributor, I love that. I love when there's a template that's pre-made for me.
Yeah, it's always easier to start from something instead of just, creating something. But I'll open this up to the group. So how do you differentiate your buyer experience versus your product? And how do we get the buyer out of that mindset?
One more time on that one for me. The buyer
Yeah, so how do you each differentiate your buyer experience versus your product? And then how do we get the buyer out of the mindset of, you know, themselves?
Yeah.
I often think it's hard to decouple the two, particularly when you're selling a software. In my case, right, the outreach is something that helps you throughout the buying process and is a key part of our sales process. And so, yes, it is sometimes challenging to decouple buyer experience and the product because one impacts one another. But I think the biggest differentiator that comes to mind for me is having reps who act as trusted advisors. Back to that consultative approach, it's about, like we talked about at the top of the call, credentializing yourself, earning that trust, and then earning that respect over and over again with the buyer, helping them see challenges from a new way, truly being a good listener to understand their business, and then share back with them new perspectives, of course, that they've never thought about before. And so I think that building those relationships and thinking about that aspect, the human aspect of the buying process, makes the buyer experience less intertwined with what's going on with the product.
I think the other thing is also bringing it back to what is the business challenge that needs to be solved. And while there are, I'm sure, a lot of products that are out there that, you know, maybe can do it, it's rather than getting into this is, you know, product focus, this is what we can do versus others. It's more, this is how our solution is uniquely mapped to this unique business challenge or business problem or goal, you know, in this timeline. Here's how we've done it before, and kind of mapping around that as opposed to just the product itself. And then I think it's where some of the more differentiation can come into play of, I keep going back to video because I think it's just such a valuable tool, but being able to just, like, everybody today like uses TikTok, Instagram, you're just scrolling through videos all the time. And I think that's how people digest information. So to be able to articulate, you know, not just maybe here's even like a marketing created video on our product or a case study, but you yourself explaining, here's why this is relevant to exactly what we talked about and how it's going to map exactly to that business challenge that you described to me, can be a big differentiator.
Yeah, you know what you shared there, Devin, is what I was put down here on my little notes with that question, and it's the use cases, use cases. I feel like, especially when I go into buyer seats and I, you know, think about ways that to separate, you know, try to separate those two or whatnot, is like I have purchased things that have been the most expensive, not because I felt that it was a product or because it was most expensive, but the organization was able to help map that solution for me. They were able to help position themselves in a use case and was able to identify and solve and push a problem. I remember one of them, and they did use a video too, but it was a marketing company that was doing some work for us. They reached out to me about 6 times. And it's not that I ignored them, I was just busy. But then the last couple of times, he gave me some specific examples of his clients and those clients' testimonials and the use cases. And it was, again, they were solving a problem for me. It just so happened that they were solving a problem for me, and they were using this particular service that they had, and, you know, some ads and whatnot. But and again, it goes back to this idea of, if I can see that you have done this before and it's proven, or it helps me to be able to see that you actually know what you're talking about, that you actually can solve the problem rather than just, you know, pitching features and benefits, that makes me feel more comfortable and confident in you and in your competency as a seller to engage or, you know, jump into a, you know, a 15-minute demo or whatnot with you.
That is a great point. Use cases are super important. And there's a million different ways that you can connect those dots and help sales teams be more equipped to connect the dots between a pain point that someone's experiencing and what you're offering. And in enablement, we think a lot about sales methodologies. And I'm not here to tell you which one is right for any organization on the call. There's a million to choose from. But I think the most important thing about any sales methodology is that you're thinking in a structured way about how you're connecting those dots. What is your team's best practice for not pitching features and benefits left and right and going into truly a story that's going to resonate? And so I think from an enablement perspective, from a selling process perspective, methodologies are really key there. But there's different flavors for different companies that, like I said, there's many to choose from, and looking at them and figuring out what works best for your size of business and your sales process is probably the best approach there. I also think about personas. I think making those stories resonate with those use cases. Who are you talking to? Helping your sales teams truly understand, what does that persona care about? What are they motivated by? What are their challenges? And so when they hear different pieces of a conversation, they're able to connect that with the things that they've been learning in training or reading in battle cards. They're getting the ability in their head to tell a more cohesive story because they understand what that type of individual deals with in an organization, and then they can marry that with what they're actually experiencing.
I think also knowing, when to say no too. I think that also builds trust. And, rather than trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, there might be some scenarios where it's not right. And I think that's a trap that people can get caught up in, especially, if you do meet somebody that is looking to go down a buying cycle, but is that actually a fit? Are they going to be a successful customer down the line? And we always like to think of, really it's not about, can you get a sale tomorrow? It's about, are they going to renew with you in a year, 2 years from now? And I think that's keeping that in mind too is super important, and kind of can keep you in a consultative mindset when understanding the true challenge and what it is that you're offering.
I love the comments down here. People are going in it. This is fun.
Yeah, I really like the point around qualifying out. And I think that's a hard skill to learn, because we always want to close the deal. But that's where, when you're working through a plan, mutual action plan or something with the buyer, you can see where those sticking points are and identify, okay, this is a time to qualify people out quickly, so you don't spend more time on a deal when you have such precious time to go focus on others.
Yeah, I like. There was so in the latest State of Sales by LinkedIn. I know Salesforce have theirs coming up soon, but one of the things that Salesforce LinkedIn had pointed out in theirs was that the top performing sellers, they sold, I think it was like 10% or 20% less, 10% less than the average sales professional. I was like, what? Like, how is the world that's possible? But it goes back to what we're talking about here, because they were actually defining selling, they were actually doing the preparation before they jumped into the call. And I think we've come to that era, and we still find people still reminiscing on the old way, like just again load up that your sequences with as many names as possible. But we really need to make sure we can understand how we can solve that. And I'm not telling salespeople spend days doing research on one particular prospect. But if go back to what you're saying with the vertical and with awesome sales enablement folks like you can help prepare us based on those personas, so that we can have better dialogue and have better conversation and not just overload.
I want to go back to the opting out point, not to put you on the spot, Devin, but I was thinking about a few things that make me think, okay, we're going to end this sales process for now. And a few things to me that come to mind are, no one's engaged with my content in X amount of time. We keep following up, and no one's looking at it. I'm not getting any of those nice emails that say, so-and-so just looked at your content. What are things that you're thinking about in a deal cycle that might make you think that someone's not necessarily going to be in it for the long haul?
Yeah, a couple of things come to mind. I think one is not making introductions to other people. Oftentimes I think, I don't know, Donald, you're the stats guy, but I think there is a stat out there somewhere that talks about how there are more stakeholders involved in deals now. And I've definitely found that to be true. It's not just one person buying something anymore. People are getting buy-in from others. People are making bigger decisions. More teams are getting involved. I know there's been, especially with sales technology, a big trend is there's not a million different tools out there. So I think if you're not getting introduced to the right people, especially if that's part of your mutual action plan, that's one leading indicator that this might not be going somewhere. And I think to a timeline, and I get not having an exact deadline or event or something going on, but not committing to, this is my goal and this is what I want to do. And, this is ideally what I'm working back from, because I think when you're talking about goals, if we're thinking about like SMART goals, there's always a timeline associated with it. So if people can't commit to at least something, even if it's for their own personal, get to a decision by this point, narrow down vendors by this point. I think that's another clear indicator that this could just be, free kind of consulting, we're chatting. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's exactly right. Especially when they're not moving you up in the org to a bigger decision maker. It's feeling like you're stuck below the line.
Right.
And one of the things that can help with that we've utilized, going back to what that point, Katie, is, and you've mentioned this too, but is that giving them assignments as well. If they're not doing the assignments up front, it's like, all right, well, I know this may not necessarily go on the right path. And going back to the stat that you asked, even on our deals, I mean, we're not closing like, $500,000 deals, but we're on average, we've seen that anywhere from that, 10 to 50K, around that park, we're seeing that there are multiple people part of it. And I'm like, holy moly. Like I remember one of the deals we were working on, I'm like, man, it's not like we're trying to ask for a, $1 billion deal here, but there are so many stakeholders that brought in. So I think that, but from what we see in our team, based on that deal size, we're seeing anywhere from 3 to 5. And I think some of the averages is around that 5 to 7, depending on if you're going larger. And going back to what the time and the climate we're in right now too with this is that look at everyone's tightening up the economy. And we see organizations that do have budget, they have spend, but they're still being cautious with it. So no one wants to be the person that makes the wrong decision, that, invests in something that wasn't effective. So it's like, shoot, let me get everybody in to look at this sucker before we make that error. And what we have seen in our team is that and I know this is like an age-old challenge too, but it's just empowering even our BDRs up front to be able to stimulate that conversation with their prospect or with the contact early in that process, and it shows your expertise again. It's like, it's not my beginning rodeo. Typically when folks makes an investment or look into something like this, they want to have other people to help evaluate that decision as well. Who else would you like us to add to this, to digital sales room or whatnot? But getting them early in that process makes such a big difference, and giving them the homework make a big difference as well. Like just simple little task commitments that you need to do.
I think another thing on that you just reminded me, while there's multiple buyers, I think there also something that I've learned a lot is bringing on people from your own organization also helps build trust, or bringing others in, that could either match a certain personality type, that can speak better on a certain subject, that can, really just align to whatever the ask is, can be super helpful in, not only building that trust and credibility with yourself, but also making sure that it's not just that kind of one-to-many approach, but this is an established team here. And, now you've met other people. You don't just have one face, but you've met other people that are also representing this company that can also, just be really helpful with that relationship.
I think there's a question from Andrew directly for Devin. It's like, what are some of the tools and tactics to keep track of and manage relationships with buying committee? And it's like, bro, you got to hit that DSR, not the DSLR.
Yeah. Yeah, the DSLR. No, yeah, digital sales rooms are so key. We use them all the time, and I love what Katie said about mutual action plans too. Katie, what do you use for, like, where do you host them? Do you use like a Google Doc for that, or?
Oh, we're so beyond spreadsheets. Outreach actually in our guide product has success plans, which is
cool.
Fully within the Outreach platform. Yeah, mutual action plan.
Okay, I should.
Yeah, and it integrates.
I should know that too.
It integrates with DSRs, as well as has its own content storage capability. So all of that is essentially your really high tech Google Doc. It does all the things and then more. And in the Outreach platform, it also pulls different buying signals, and you can track whether your plan is on track and the type of engagement you're getting with it. So it's much more useful than just looking in boxes checked in the Google Doc. Yeah.
Katie,
Nice.
can I ask you a question too with that, regarding that? As a sales leader, and as I work with other teams as well, what are some things that you do to help? Because you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but how do you foster the adoption across, the team? Because some folks might say, I've been doing this for 10 years, DK. I know how to do it.
Yeah, it's always hard to teach people new tricks. I think you have to make it business as usual in the organization. Even at Outreach, it was a bit of a slow burn to get us to jump all in on our new product, but we are fully bought into it now. And I think that starts with setting expectations, to your question earlier, around what deal size is this required on. And making sure that people know, okay, I have a deal this size. How do I start? How do I introduce it? How do I use it throughout the process? What templates are my go-to templates that are already aligned to my sales process? And then it's a manager accountability motion. You have to make sure that your managers have the right dashboards, tools to check on whether the reps are adding those success plans to their deals. And when they're not, investigate why are those gaps. Is it we have too many deals and it just takes too long and I'm not good at that flow? Am I could think of a million reasons that one might object to doing that, but it's about digging into how can you address those pain points that someone's experiencing. Is it a need for more education? Is it a lack of motivation? Do they not see the value? With any salesperson, and any of us for that matter, I think it's important to remember that the what's in it for me is perhaps the most important thing to land. And so we do that with our buyers when we share the mutual aspect of the success plan. And we do that with our reps when we try to get them on board with using one. It is a benefit to you as the seller in organizing your life. It's a benefit to the buyer because they have transparency. And it has to be part of your business. It has to be part of something that is an expectation and that you're tracking and managing actively. Otherwise, adoption is just going to be ad hoc.
Amen to that. Love it.
I think, just somebody that is using this, in my own sales cycles, I think kind of making them tailored to your own personality is easier to deliver, like just new tactics, new techniques, whether it's a mutual action plan or something else. I think it has to be a little bit more like, here's a couple best practices on how people have delivered it, and this person delivered it maybe a little bit more in line with how you speak or how you typically talk to different prospects, or, just a little bit more aligned with your personality can make it a lot easier. That's something that we do at Allego a lot, is just kind of share best practices, but not just one as the tried and true, many doing the same thing. So it's kind of like I can align to what's working for, somebody that feels more like me than somebody else maybe, and it's a lot less scary.
Oh, I love that idea. I think we at Outreach are really trying to open the door to make everyone feel very comfortable with doing that internally. We're building a culture around that and sharing feedback on one another's, because just like you said, it has to be tailored. I can tell you all day that your pitch needs to sound like X, Y, and Z related to introing a success plan. But at the end of the day, if you just regurgitate exactly what I say, that's not going to sound authentic to you. So
right.
All
And
about
it's
the starting
be harder.
point. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And not everyone sells the same. Processes should be consistent, but this is a human business and we are bringing our personal selves to it all the time, and people buy from people.
Love it.
We'll do call reviews often. I don't know if you guys have your calls recorded. We do. But I think getting just another set of eyes too, to just see like, hey, did you miss anything? Or, what could have worked here instead is something that's also really helpful, and just making it more comfortable and actually doing it.
Any more question came in, Savannah, that you got for us?
I think we kind of hit on most of them. Andrew had asked, what are your team's biggest challenges in shifting to the consultative role? How are you helping them overcome the challenges? Does anybody have anything to add to that?
I know I'm going to say the word that everybody, most salespeople cringe with, but it's for us, it's role plays. Like role plays, practicing that idea, because it's so easy to fall back on old practices, but we help them to break out of that, and to, because it's hard to, when it comes to words like being consultative, you have to be curious. And if you're not effective at asking questions and to spark curiosity, and to be able to at least know by doing your own, understanding what's work, dissecting some of our past deals, and being like, looking at it almost like a science experiment, like what made this deal go through. That having those conversations helps with us a lot. We have a morning meeting, and it's just like a quick little powwow that we do, and it's always fun to hear what worked, like for some folks the day before, and just kind of break that down, and then going back to like, let's role play. Let's put ourselves in that situation. How can you be consultative in that? How can you be, what kind of questions could you ask better? How could you make that, spark more curiosity, in a situation like this? And those tend to be the things that help our team the most. I mean, we're not a huge team internally, but it definitely does work for us. And then when we use it with our clients, it's the same thing in small groups. Makes a big difference.
Oftentimes, what you hear something that your product can solve, and you instantly think,
Mhm.
this, I have the solution for you, but you neglect to ask those questions. So I think what you just said, Donald, I mean, that's so true, because no matter how many times that you hear similar challenges, similar experiences, everybody is individual, has their own, it's unique to them. And while you might have a million of those similar conversations, this is the first time they're having it. So still being consultative, you don't always have the answers. And being curious. Yeah, I love that. Asking those questions that are going to actually get to the root of why we're talking.
I think that one of the biggest traps people fall in is when they're launching new features and different aspects of their product, that they forget the consultative conversation aspect. And I think about a lot of we've done a ton of product enablement in the last year at Outreach, and I've seen many organizations spend a lot of time talking about the nitty gritty of each feature, but they didn't spend time up leveling that into the story and making it resonate with the persona, and spending time on activities, like you mentioned, role play, to help you tell stories with those features. It's one thing to be able to sit and memorize and list all the new features that came out in a recent product release, but it's another thing to be able to contextualize that in a conversation. And so making sure that product enablement is not just a laundry list of features that are recently released, but also being thoughtful about what personas you're talking to, or the highest level story that you're trying to land with all of these features. That is critical to not falling in the feature function non-consultative conversation.
We actually had another question come in to just what are y'all's thoughts or tactics to keep track of managing relationships with the buying committee and next steps to provide value?
I think all of that sits in go back to mutual action plans again. But I do think that is a great place to keep all of that info. And more, regardless of what tools you choose or how you decide to manage your process, having all of that information in one place is the most important. You don't want to be looking in 500 places to keep track of things. So find the centralized tool that works for you. Marry tools together if it's a content space or it's a project planning space. All of those things should be connected and integrated, so that you only have to look in one place, and it should be visible to both sides of the house. The buyer and seller need visibility to that, so that you're both on the same page about what's getting done in a deal cycle.
Perfect.
Yes to that.
All right. Well, is there anything else that we want to touch on before we hop off? It looks like we've answered all the questions right now in the Q&A. If you're attending and still on with us, make sure you drop any questions that you have in the chat. Let's see here. Let me see if I missed anything here.
I see one more about aligning sales and marketing departments on a revenue goal. My biggest tip for that is the what's in it for me. Salespeople need to understand why they're being asked to do what they do. It can't just be marketing producing a bunch of stuff and making asks without an understanding of what it's driving for them. And making sure your leaders are aligned is also critical. Often if the sales leader and the marketing leader are not talking, that is a problem. You should drive those regular cadences that streamline the two parts of the organization. So open communication and being transparent about what it's driving on each side of the house, because they're connected goals at the end of the day, or they should be.
Something Allego does is have our marketing leaders anytime there's a new initiative, a new case study deck, piece of collateral that comes out, our marketing leaders will not only upload that to Allego, which is the tool we use, but they'll record a video over it, and they'll describe, this is how we want you to use it. This is the talk track. It's like a 3-minute video. Typically, it's not a heavy lift to watch, but it's saying, here's how we want you talking about it. Here's how it could be useful for you. Here's the situations to use this in, or here's what this means. And it really, Katie, to your point, it just breaks down that barrier and opens up the line of communication.
I think one go back to Katie's point on this. It comes from the leadership aspect as well. Many organizations have made that shift where they're looking at it as like, obviously, implementing like CROs and having functions where we are marrying that sales and marketing effort and seeing it as like as a revenue generating community with that same outcome, with that same goal, just like different functions to accomplish that. And I feel that part that makes such a huge difference because that allows for the top down and to show that we're aligned from the leadership standpoint. And what I've seen with a lot of the smaller or even mid-sized organizations is that we executives say, yeah, this is important, do it. But then trying to get it accomplished at the ground level, it becomes even more challenging when you don't have that higher up support. So.
Awesome. I think that's it. If anybody else has a question, drop it in the chat here. We'll give it a few more minutes. But while we wait for that, I kind of want to just do like a quick round robin of just what's your maybe your call to action. Like what's one thing that you would encourage folks to do to be more effective and efficient as soon as they hop off? I'll go ahead. Who wants to start?
I think I know what Devin's is.
Yeah. My answer is obviously digital sales rooms. I think if you're not leveraging that, you shouldn't. But if you don't have a tool that's going to allow you to create a digital sales room, at least maybe use videos or have a central place to keep that communication differentiate and personalized.
I think mine would be setting up your programs with not just a launch motion, but a follow through, a reinforcement, and track and a way to measure. As I mentioned, if you're going to roll out a new process like a mutual action plan into your sales cycle, it's equally as important as how you're tracking and holding people accountable to that action as it is how much hype you create when you launch it and make the initial ask of the teams. And so being sure that you're thinking not just about launch, you're thinking about reinforcement and sustaining these experiences so they get traction within your organizations.
And I know there's a lot of folks there piggybacking off of you, Katie, on that one. There are a lot of sales leaders here, and I would tell you that if leaving this call, especially as a sales leader myself, one of the things that I know that we're reevaluating is how effective are we with those different talk tracks, with those different personas, and to make sure that our team, everyone is being impactful with their insights, so they can get better replies and better opens, and that leads to better opportunities and better pipe. And obviously, I like that because we can forecast better. So, love it.
And not to mention always testing new things. I feel like that's a good point to add, not always just doing the same thing, because it's what you've always done, always improving. There's always room for improvement, but looks like we've got all the questions answered. But thank you all for giving your attention to these awesome speakers today and being present with us. Like I mentioned at the very, very top of the call, if you were here, if you're in San Francisco, join us this weekend. We've got an awesome event talking about the trend of falling quota. And I just want to give a big thanks one more time to our incredible speakers today. Thanks for sharing your time with the community and being present as well. And I look forward to next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
See ya.